And the crowd goes wild. Welcome to the show. This is Common Threads. It's called Common Threads, right? There it is. We do this every Thursday night, live from Brooklyn, New York. 2 guests, 1 hour-ish. Stick around, though, because after the show, we're going to be doing a very special edition of Common Threads late night. No, what do we call it? Oh, Common Threads Overtime with Taylor Craig, Japan Dan the Man. Courtney's going to pop on, too. She didn't know that. I made that up, but now she is. Please let us know what you think in the comments as we go along. Obviously, a very slow news week. Not a lot to talk about. But please ask your questions, make your comments. We're going to put them up on screen. We like to think that's kind of something unique and different about the show. And then we're going to kick those conversations and questions to our guests. And let's bring them in right now. We're going to do a quick beer run to try and figure out what everyone's drinking. First up, Carlo Versano is the politics editor at Newsweek. He is an Emmy-winning journalist. Bro, you won an Emmy? I learned that today.
I did indeed. Many moons ago.
Damn,
ago.
You're humble enough, though. You don't put it in the background of your shot. I would be so obnoxious if I won an Emmy. I'd have it tattooed on my damn head. He's also the author of Newsweek's 1600 newsletter. Also joined tonight, very excited for this, Jeremiah Johnson, founder of the Center for New Liberalism, author of Infinite Scroll, super fun read, published in a ton of amazing places. Jeremiah, Carlo, thank you, fellas.
Thank you, JD. Good to be here.
Jeremiah, we're going to start with you because the beer run was it's a new segment, and it was your idea right before we came on. Jeremiah, we're going to start with you. What are you drinking tonight?
Also, I only showed up because you said this was a show we could drink, during. So that was the primary calling card for me. I am drinking, what do we have here? La Fin du Monde, which seems appropriate. The End of the World, a beautiful Belgian-style triple. So it seemed thematically appropriate for the second Trump term. So, cheers, guys.
The End of the World. Carlo Versano, how about over to you? Beer run.
I'm just, I'm going with the classic Peroni. Peroni in a bottle. Peroni. Can't beat it.
No, we love it. I'm sticking Americans. We're going to the great state of Wisconsin, folks. PBR. That's all we got in this. I think that's all we have in the studio, but that's all I would really want in the studio. So very excited to have both of you guys here. Long time. Are these guys related? First question of the show. The two of you? No, I do believe that the two of you know of each other's work, but you seem to have met for the first time while we were dialing in before the show. You're not related that we know about?
We are two fair-skinned, blonde, white guys, though, so that's got to count for something.
Are you guys...
one time I did a 23andMe, and, the thing you spit in and it gives your DNA or whatever, and it came back and said we couldn't find any DNA. And I did it a second time, and it said we couldn't find DNA. And so now I think I might just be an alien.
Bro, you're a vampire? That's crazy.
The possibilities are endless here.
I feel like I have, I don't know why, as if all the social media I use isn't bad enough, but data privacy. Did that concern you at all with the 23andMe thing? You're always kind of they could track, and you hear these stories about law enforcement track down someone from a cold case because some distant cousin spit in a tube.
I mean, I haven't murdered anyone recently, so I think I'm probably good.
The bigger concern with them is that didn't they go bankrupt or are in the process of going bankrupt? And then what happens to all that information they got, all that data?
Good data. It got sold to Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, right.
There you go. Listen, they got everything otherwise. All right, fellas, let's dig right in. Obviously, so we're going to get into some of the minutia of the topics of the week. It's fucking insane last 72 hours. It's been nuts. Just my very first question, and Carlo, I'm going to start with you. First show we're doing here since the start of Trump presidency 2.0. Have you had any holy shit, this is real moments this week? Oh my God, this is actually happening. What is the most jarring or stunning moment that we've had, Carlos, since the weekend, I wonder?
I've been in coverage mode, so I haven't really had that. I had that on election night, I have to say. When he came out at 3 a.m. on election night, and I thought, oh man, we're really doing this again, aren't we? But this week I was writing in the newsletter this morning. I've actually been sort of thinking the other way. It's almost like it seems different this time around. Not better or worse necessarily, but just he seems a little calmer, maybe a little more. It's less crazy. It's less insane. I mean, I remember the first couple. You guys do too, right? The first couple of weeks of the last Trump term was really nuts. This may be a little more normal almost.
I don't remember the first few weeks of the first Trump term. I think I blacked out during all that. No, I do remember it very well. And I've been saying the same thing, Carlo, and I've treaded very carefully on this. Since the election, I've said, I don't know if it was Butler or what it was, there seems to be a little bit of a softening. And then every time I think that, he's like out there just taking his digs again at Biden. He did it again today during the Davos speech, which was wild. Jeremiah, how about you? What has there been one real standout, like, oh man, here we go again type of moment?
I mean, I would kind of dispute that he's gotten any more normal. I think what we have gotten is more tired and more nihilistic as a society about what all this means. Try to flash back to like what it would have been like with Obama, for instance, if Obama had come into his second term in office in 2012 by launching a crypto coin with his name on it and making several $1 billion before, like 2 days before he was inaugurated. Like the absolute amount of shrieking there would have been about corruption, hysterical hand-wringing, which probably would have been deserved because it's a really weird thing to do. And it is a really like kind of brazenly profit off the presidency kind of thing. And like, that's just one example. That's one thing where like, Trump is still Trump. He's still doing the same volume of insane stuff. We've just all gotten too tired to deal with it. As a society, we're a lot more cynical now and nihilistic, and like the era of optimism and idealism that we had under Obama and, in the mid 2000s, I think is just dead.
Imagine if Obama did this game would absolutely drive you insane. If you try to compare presidencies, I know we always tend to vote. I mean, if you think back of it in our lifetime, I guess it's kind of true. We tend to vote for the candidate who's most unlike the incumbent, right? So we kind of do these big swings back and forth. Like largely Obama was kind of like the anti-Trump, and then we went the anti-Obama, and then we had to go the anti-Trump, or the anti-Bush Obama was, and then we kind of swung back for Biden. We're like, we're swinging right back. So to that point, Jeremiah, remind me of something, and we're going to, I want to get your sense on this question right now about how the Democrats are posturing themselves in reaction, and we'll get into a lot of the stuff that Trump has done. But I'm really interested right now. So we're going to look at two tweets. These really stood out. The second one in particular is like the best take that I've heard. And it has specifically to do with the DEI conversation across the federal government, but we're going to broaden it out for the purpose of the conversation. So here's the first tweet here. I've been looking at lefty social media all morning. This was a couple days ago. It's fairly quiet so far in Trump's anti-DEI and anti-affirmative action executive orders yesterday. The lack of outrage is almost eerie. To which this is a really good response. I think a big reason for the muted Dem reaction to Trump's immigration or DEI actions is that for a long time, Democrats thought these were the things important to winning the votes of minority voters. That no longer appears to be true, which raises the question, what are we doing this for? And so, Jeremiah, I'm going to start with you here. Whether it's on this or anything else more broadly, do you get the sense that at least right now, Democrats, are they in wait and see mode, or are they just kind of too deflated right now to fight back?
I really think it's not specific to DEI. I think it's a generalized sense that Democrats have the vibes have shifted and they feel like they've lost and they've been crushed. And it's funny because it's out of proportion to the actual results. Trump won the popular vote by a point, maybe a point and a half. They barely held on to the House. They've got like a 2-3 seat majority in the House of Representatives. So objectively, this was not like a Reagan 1984 kind of election. This was not a massive, crushing election that really gives you just sweeping mandate to do anything you want at all. But the vibes are just real bad for Democrats right now, and it's hard to quantify that. But in 2016, when Trump was elected for the first time, it was such a shock to the system, but you saw lots of people getting out there and there were massive protests, from the very, very beginning, the Women's March, and like there was just a ton of energy and hashtag resistance. All the wine mom resistance libs were out in force. And this time, I think people are exhausted and they don't have the energy for it. On DEI specifically, I haven't looked too deeply into what Trump has done. I think there's a sense that some of the DEI initiatives that have been undertaken have overreached. I don't know, is Trump going to just toss out the ones that overreached? Is he going to end up tossing out all the civil rights legislation that we passed since the 1960s?
Which he started doing today with the revoking of the LBJ EO.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely some danger of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, even for people who think that DEI has gone too far. But yeah, I think this is just a generalized sense that liberals and Democrats are exhausted, and they put up the good fight during the last term and beat Trump, and now he's back again. And so, like, what's the point?
I think I would agree more or less with that, but I think there's something else to it, because it's true, right, that this was not a landslide that some of his supporters say it is, but he did win the popular vote, like outright, right? Like, I don't think that we're in our lifetimes, any of us at least, are ever going to see another, 1984 landslide election. Like, the country is just too polarized. I think one of the reasons why you're seeing the Democrats so deflated is there's no Russia boogeyman. There's no why didn't Hillary, campaign in Wisconsin. There's no Facebook beat him. Trump was an aberration back then. What I was saying before about how it feels more normal is it kind of is more normal. Like, he won the election outright.
So this is because Jeremiah brought it up, so we had to cue it up. Look at the 1984 map, by the way. This is insanity.
Yep. We're never seeing that.
Now, this was Walter Mondale, I believe. He carried his home state. It's like, here you go, poor guy, with all due respect. You poor guy. Go ahead and take your 13 electoral votes, and you could go home in the sandbox with nothing else except for that. This is absolutely stunning. And now this was re-election, right? This was 1984? Yes. Yeah. This would have been Reagan's re-election. So real quick, while we still have this up, Carl, you said we'll never see this again. Jeremiah, could you possibly imagine with our 50? It's just like, look at the Congress breakdown right now, like you said, right, man? Right now, the House split.
I think
2 to
never
3 votes.
Is a
never again.
Never is a strong word. It's unlikely that we see something like this. But the thing, one of the things I think about is you can go back to the 1880s, 1890s, and there was an era of very close elections where 5 or 6 elections in a row were decided by 2 points. And it was just an era of closeness. And look, somebody at that point could have extrapolated, oh, well, we'll never see that again. But, things happen in society. World War I happened, and the Great Depression happened.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, FDR is winning elections like these. FDR is winning that kind of landslide election. And then you look at it and you see, well, the Republican Party is just going to be dead forever. And that turns out not to be true either. History can happen, whether it's, China invades Taiwan, or we get some sort of artificial general intelligence, or something will happen. There will be a crisis. There will be a foreign war. There will be something, and you never know how fast things can shift. So I don't think it's likely, but give it 30 years and the world could look very, very different.
It's also, if you're talking the FDR re-elections and Reagan, the common denominator there between the last 3 FDR elections and 84 is that they were re-elections. Right. So that's another thing, is that you're not even decreasing the likelihood of a sitting vice president with the same popularity. These are clearly rare kind of watershed moments in U.S. history where everyone's just universally hey, we got our guy. That's the dude. Please, for the love of God, continue doing this job for another few years. We did have one comment there, and I'm going to kick that one to Carlo. Someone said, basically, this is clearly a landslide, Carlo, because he went 7 for 7 in the swing states. I guess notwithstanding the margins. What do you think?
I think Midnight Rambler 3760 is more or less right. I mean, it wasn't a landslide in the sense of a Reagan landslide, but Trump did win all 7 swing states. When I was covering election night, we sort of knew this thing was in the bag by 9 or 10 o'clock. I mean, they didn't call it that early, but there was no sense of in 2016 that this could have. It was super close. Trump was going to win this election. I mean, I think he was going to win from the moment he got shot in Butler. Actually, no, he was going to win from the moment Joe Biden stepped on stage and, had his brain leaking out all over the floor of the CNN debate stage in Atlanta that night.
Yeah, that was brutal. I had also asked this question to the producers before the show, and I had not expected to ask you both, but I am genuinely curious. Jeremiah, you first. Who's the leader of the Democratic Party today?
That's a great question.
I mean, right now there isn't one, and this is what happens when you lose an election: is you go through a process of hand-wringing and finger-pointing, and everybody in the party is fighting with each other about, where should the party go? What have we done wrong? Which direction do we need to be pointed in for the future? And that's natural. That happens when you lose a presidential election. The thing is, it always does work itself out. You could look at, the 2012 election that Republicans lost, and Obama's won 2 elections in a row, both by bigger margins. By the way, if we're calling everything a landslide now, Obama won much bigger landslides than Trump won at either point. So I guess every election is a landslide. Biden's victory over Trump was a larger percentage victory than Trump's over, Trump over Harris. But, you can look at that world of 2012 and say, oh, wow, with the way this is, Democrats have won like 5 out of the last 6 popular votes. George Bush only skated by in 2000 because he, lost the popular vote, but the state of Florida was real messed up. And you could have this real sense of doom in 2012 as a Republican, like, are we ever going to win again? But that ends up not being the case. All the recriminations and all the finger pointing Republicans did in 2012 ended up not mattering because this fluke out of nowhere, Donald Trump's presidency, comes in 2016 and he wins. And so, the lowest point that Democrats will be is right now. And the highest that the conservative vibes will ever be is right now in this moment. As Donald Trump starts doing stuff and actually making decisions, people don't like when you make decisions. It mostly pisses them off. And so his popularity will start to decline. That's another feature of kind of the modern age of presidencies. I think every president going back to Bush starts with a higher approval rating and it just steadily declines through their entire term. So, Democrats don't really have a leader right now, but they will figure it out. Stuff will happen. Tariffs will be dropped. Wars will start. Things will happen and Democrats will respond to it, and we'll see what it looks like 4 years from now.
Carlo, who's the leader?
No, I mean, I agree with that. I don't know who the leader is. I mean, Chuck Schumer? No. But
well.
I think, I mean, I guess technically, but what Jeremiah is talking about, I think is right. And look at 2004, right? I mean, Kerry lost that election. I mean, it was decisive, but like, it was still pretty close. And, Barack Obama had just come on stage at the DNC that year. That was the first time people had really seen him. Nobody would have said in January 2005 that Barack Obama was the head of or even the future of the Democratic Party, I don't think. But a couple years later, he is, running for election and cruises to victory. So, yeah, you're right. We don't know what's going to happen. And I think what Jeremiah was saying about sort of like thermostatic opinion is an important point here. This is probably, or at least this could be, the high watermark of the Trump presidency, right? It feels, especially in this day and age with social media and everything, it feels better to be in the opposition party, right? So, Trump is in his sort of honeymoon period. But as Jeremiah said,
and Carlo, can I break in there just because there's an important point, and this I think was one of Joe Biden's failed theories of politics. Joe Biden wanted to do a bunch of very big things, and he had his point of view. He's a liberal he campaigned as a moderate. He governed as more of a progressive, and he wanted to pass all these big bills. There's like 4 different $1 trillion bills: the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the American Recovery Plan, all these gigantic bills. And he thought, if I do big things and I like give my constituents what they want, they will reward me. Right. I will be rewarded for doing things. And that's not how politics works.
But Jeremiah,
in politics, you are like punished for doing things. You have to spend that political capital. And once you do things, people mostly hate it and they punish you. And that's just a feature of modern politics. Is the safest thing to do is nothing at all.
Well, I think Biden actually made a specific point there that was bad, right? Like, he did pass those bills, but then he didn't implement them, right? So, you pass this huge infrastructure bill, and you think that in a couple of years, voters are going to be like, oh, well, he did pass that bill, but what does he have to show for it, right? There's such a thicket of red tape. And I mean, I think this could be possibly one of the good things of the Trump presidency is sort of cutting through that thicket, right? But, what was it? There's 7 electrical EV chargers that were created over the course of the last 3 years since the Infrastructure Act. I mean, what do you think people are going to say?
I've got an even better example. If you want a fun one to throw it at parties, the Biden administration, I think, as part of the American Rescue Plan, part of one of the big bills, allocated $42 billion for rural broadband, right, which, in theory, seems like a fine thing to do. We want people in rural areas to also have access to high-speed internet. So the federal government says we're going to spend $42 billion to make that happen. That was signed in 2021. As of January 2025, as Biden is leaving office, precisely 0 Americans have been actually connected to rural broadband through this program. And look, it's one thing to actually pass the big bills and to put a big top line spending number on it, but I am 100% in agreement that it does not matter if you pass the big bill, big number, hooray, if you don't actually build the thing. If you don't actually, if environmental reviews and labor contracts and union requirements and DEI programs or whatever the case, if there's all these things that slow you down and stop you from putting the stuff and actually building things, nobody's going to care that you actually just passed the bill.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm always struck by how perception drives reality. And I think this election solidified, it's a combination of what both of you guys just said, that you're better off not having accomplished something but convincing people you did than actually accomplishing something and having people not realize that you did that. Because, like, for instance, one of many examples, Trump beats this drum all the time of, like, we were energy independent. I still have no idea what energy independence means. I could ask 10 people, I get 20 different answers. Right. But this idea of like, oh, we're going to be energy independent. Well, if you think we were energy independent under Trump, then we definitely were under Biden because we continued with like the input outputs of oil production. But, to this point, it's like, I agree. Biden actually did pass these big bills. We've talked a lot about on the show how the Inflation Reduction Act was just a really bad name for otherwise like a really substantial bill. But if the average person doesn't feel it or doesn't know that they actually did it, and it's to get into like a messaging thing, also signing the checks. A lot of people made fun of Donald Trump for signing the checks. Oh, you got to put your name on the check.
I didn't. That was brilliant.
But Biden didn't put his name on the check. And I think he kind of went with like this FDR route of like, well, no, it's just the morally right thing to do. We're just going to give them out to people. The Uncle Sam bucks. I want people to give me credit. Well, then no one gave you credit for it for the election. There's an optics. I wonder how much is going to be rewritten. What is the most important new Trump policy that Democrats want to crush ASAP? You guys got quick answers for these? Jeremiah, what do you think?
I mean, in terms of like what's the most destructive thing that Trump is going to do for the country, there's a lot of big ones. The problem is that Democrats for a lot of these, they can't just unilaterally crush it until they get some semblance of power back. I would say that if I could wave a wand, it would be the birthright citizenship one. I know that's something we maybe want to discuss, but that seems just blatantly unconstitutional. There was actually a judge, it's already been struck down or put on hold, I guess is the legal term, put a stay on the executive order that ends birthright citizenship. And the judge who did it literally was like blasting the defense, or the Department of Justice's lawyers, saying like, I can't believe you would actually put this in front of me. Like, in so much language, he said, like, are you an idiot? Are you dumb for putting this in front of me? And I don't know, that seems like one of the worst ones to me. You could also talk about the 25% tariffs on Canada, which seems insane. But
we'll get into the specifics on birthright in a second. But yeah, Carlo, go ahead real quick on this here.
No, I was just going to say, this is Trump's big. This is the point, right? Trump knew this was going to get struck down. He's taken a big swing that he can get 5 Supreme Court justices to say that that birthright citizenship is not actually enshrined in the Constitution, right? This is going to the Supreme Court. It's going to be one of the biggest cases of the next 4 years.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
I'm very skeptical that even a conservative Supreme Court would like the judge. If you want to pull up that thing, I saw. You were.
You referenced that tweet. I saw this from your Twitter account earlier, Jeremiah. All right, let's pull up that tweet again. We'll skip the AOC thing.
And keep in mind, this is actually a Reagan-appointed judge. This is not like a bleeding heart liberal. This is a Reagan judge who basically was like, what did he say? I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar could state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order, which is basically lawyer speak for, are you an idiot? So that seems like a big one to me in terms of the worst stuff. You could also talk about like he's undermining the independence of the Federal Reserve. He's putting tariffs on our allies. There's a nice smorgasbord of stuff that you could, wail and gnash your teeth about.
Yeah, I mean, this judge here in this case, I think this is a judge in Seattle. You said appointed by Reagan, correct? I've been on the bench for almost 4 decades. I can't remember another case where the question presented is as clear as this one is. This is a blatantly unconstitutional order, says Judge Coffenor. There are other times in world history where we look back and people of goodwill can say, where were the judges? Where were the lawyers? Man, I agree. I think there's been moments, even with this, Donald Trump put 1/3 of the Supreme Court in their current position. There definitely have been cases where I've seen conservatives on Twitter get mad at Gorsuch. They get mad at Amy Coney Barrett. They're like, how could you view things that way? I would have to imagine this is one of those things they're going to look at and basically say, hey, Mr. President, thank you for the job 4 or 5 years ago, but like I cannot back you on this. But I could be
I wouldn't
wrong.
be so sure about that.
Okay, go for it.
Well, we'll see. He needs what? He needs 5. So, can he get everybody?
I actually have a couple of active bets on this with some people, with some acquaintances, friends on social media. I've put some money down on this because I'm pretty convinced it'll get struck down.
What's your wager? That gets struck down.
Just that it'll be struck down, by whichever highest court it reaches.
I guess my expectations with the Supreme Court have fallen, the bottom has fallen out of them since the Dobbs decision, right? Like I thought there was just no chance they were going to do that because, the anti-abortion movement was such a crucial part of the whole conservative thing. And then, it was like they were the dog that caught the car when it finally happened. But I was wrong, right? They did it.
I mean, I think the dog that caught the car is a great analogy there, just because they keep losing on this issue. Conservatives are losing on this issue, even in like deeply red states, like in Kansas. I think Kansas passed a right to not that they passed it, they rejected a pro-life amendment to their constitution, something like 60-40. And like Kansas is a pretty red state. Like this is an issue that Democrats will just be able to now hit with a stick, over and over and over for the next 2 decades. So, I'm also pretty sure that the number of abortions actually being performed nationwide has not decreased. So like in the end, I'm not sure what the point was if the actual number of abortions didn't decrease. So
that gets back to the point we had to kick in the conversation of a lot of liberals and Democrats sitting there saying, what are we picking these fights for? Really, if voters really don't care. We're going to put a pin in this. We're going to come right back to the 14th Amendment because, we love to talk about the amendments to the Constitution. We're going to hear from our sponsor real quick. Jeremiah and Carlo, hang out 1 second. Folks, if you're serious about investing, how is that for a change of pace there? It was a smooth transition. I did my best with it. If you're serious about investing, you need to know all about public.com. Of course, that's the place you can invest in everything: stocks, options, bonds, crypto, you name it. These folks got it. They even offer some of the highest yields in the industry, like the bond account, 6% or higher yield that stays locked in, even as Jay Powell and his friends at the Fed expected to continue lowering rates this year. What sets Public apart is how they give you the tools you need to make informed investment decisions. They got a built-in AI tool. It's absolutely awesome. It's called Alpha. It gives you all the information you need to know about not just that an asset is moving, but why that asset is moving. It helps you become a smarter investor. Investing for those who take it seriously. Scan the QR code. It's right there. We made it as big as we could on the screen, or head on over to public.com/CT to learn more. Jeremiah, Carlo, it's a very important part of the show because they pay the bills.
Hold on. 6% yield?
6% or higher yield. Yeah, last I saw was at like 6.1 or 6.2 last week when we did the show right before. Yeah, and I love Public, and I'm not just saying that because they sponsor the show, but legitimately, I have a nice portfolio there, and I stay active with it, and I encourage lots of other. I've turned family and friends onto Public as well, so we started doing it on the show. So we always appreciate their sponsorship.
I only invest in Trump and Melania meme coins. So
whoa, dude, we're gonna be cooking on that coming up soon. Holy cow, that was a mess. But so I do want to wrap up this one. Can we put up the 14th Amendment graphic again on the side of the screen? So I think this is the key legal phrase to me that we just had up there. It's that second line right there, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And I get the sense that the Trump DOJ is looking for just enough legal ambiguity on what is, of course, a Reconstruction Amendment baked in since the 1860s. And we're going to sit there and be like, let's actually try and mess with something that has. I'd also be interested to know if you had to go back and look at the Senate confirmation hearings for these recent few judges. I wonder if birthright citizenship really came up. I know Dobbs did. I know a lot of the other cases did, but did anyone ask Amy Coney Barrett, is the 14th Amendment set in stone? I actually don't even know if they had that conversation. But Jeremiah, what more do you think here? Or Carlo, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I commissioned a story for one of my reporters to look into this, and then I forgot to actually follow up. So I should know the answer, but I don't.
Fair enough.
I
We
mean,
discover these
this
things
is the
together.
fun part of the show where three guys who know absolutely nothing about constitutional
Right.
law are going
Correct.
to sit here and try to teach you about constitutional law.
That's how we do it.
I mean, as someone who is not a lawyer of any kind, my understanding is that the whole subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a phrase they put in there to specifically exclude like diplomats' children,
Right.
because diplomats in a very real way are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They literally don't have to follow the laws. You know, where I live a few blocks from where the United Nations is, and there's always like cars parked wherever they want to be parked because they don't have to pay the parking tickets. They just ignore them and it doesn't matter because they're diplomats. They have diplomatic immunity. In a very real sense, diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, whereas like an illegal immigrant or any kind of immigrant obviously is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You can charge them with crimes. You know, if they work, they have to pay taxes. They are in every normal meaning of jurisdiction, they're subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. Otherwise, how would we have the authority to deport them, right? So that, to me, I don't know. I think it's a pretty open and shut case. I think there's very little ambiguity here, and this is, you know, they're taking a swing and they're going to miss, but it speaks to me as a larger, just like, Trump doesn't believe a lot of things with any certainty. Most issues he will waffle back and forth on.
That's
but
the
like
best part about him, by the way.
Immigration and trade are the two things that he is just dead set on. He really hates immigration. He really hates trade, and he loves tariffs, and kind of everything else is negotiable. So I don't know. It's troubling to me as a guy who thinks immigration makes America much stronger and who thinks free trade is great. All of this, I think, is terrible. So, you know, it is what it is.
I always say that, and I think this is maybe one of my personal learned lessons from the Trump presidency. If you're outraged about everything, you're outraged about nothing.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a place where, I don't want to say so much people in the news, but anyone who's on the left or even, you know, moderates, independents, anyone, if you're going to be outraged about Trump, the difficulty is that you can't have daily outrage, because then it all just becomes noise. Then you're just clearly like an anti-Trump person. But it's also very tough to kind of pick and choose.
Steve Bannon said, right?
What's that, Jeremiah?
Steve Bannon's whole thing, right? He'd flood the zone with shit.
Flood the zone with shit.
And there, you know, that's the whole strategy.
But I got to say, if we're shitting on the media right now, so I was watching CNN yesterday. Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
They can't help themselves, right? It is like watching CNN yesterday. It was like watching them in 2017. They have learned absolutely nothing. They were doing hit after hit on the stupid Elon Musk. Was it a Nazi salute or was it not thing? It's like, this is exactly what Jeremiah is talking about. If everything becomes the outrage of the day, then people are just going to tune out, which is exactly what's happening to places like CNN. It's just incredible to me.
Yeah, I also wonder, I mean, I've asked other guests this. I'll ask you both this before we wrap this up, because we are moving on to meme coins next, folks. Don't you worry. Shit coins. What are the, just because you're both good seasoned journalists in different lanes. So what are the biggest learned lessons that people in newsrooms or people who call themselves journalists should have taken away from the first Trump presidency to do different? How do we approach things a little bit different this time around? Jeremiah?
I don't know if I'm a journalist. I talk a lot on the internet. I don't know if that qualifies me, but
I think it does.
I mean, one of the things that I think is that I do think some of this stuff matters, but it's just, you have to be, maybe like Carlo was suggesting, you have to be selective in what you choose to get outraged about, or if you're a news media organization that actually wants to make people mad about Trump, you know, which not everybody does. CNN just wants ratings. You know, Jeff Zucker, I guess he's no longer at CNN, but Jeff Zucker was a guy who would sell his grandmother into slavery if it would get him a quarter point in the Nielsen ratings. But if you are actually like the kind of idealistic person who wants people to pay attention to the bad stuff Trump is doing, you've got to actually deal with the stuff that sticks and not just the outrage of the moment. I wish there was more reporting on, like, you know, what is Trump's plan for healthcare? Because he said he wants to repeal Obamacare, and that would kick 20 to 25 million people off their healthcare plans and plunge us into another healthcare crisis. Why does nobody ask him about that? He gets no questions about that. And instead everybody's like, well, do you think Elon was a Nazi? And that kind of stuff doesn't matter. There's so many actually substantive things he could be talking. What is your plan for the budget deficit? What is your plan for Social Security, which is slated to run out of funds in, what is it, 5 to 6 years from now? Like, these are all very serious questions, and Trump has no actual policy answers for this, because he'd rather talk about DEI, and he'd rather, talk about immigrants who are raping people and whatever other stuff. Like, he's got things that he wants to talk about. Don't let him just get away with only talking about that stuff. Make him focus on Social Security, on healthcare, on what does Trump think about abortion? Because he's been able to dance back and forth on that. He appointed the people who overturned Roe v. Wade, but then he kind of ran away from it as soon as it seemed like it might be unpopular. These are the questions that I wish journalists would actually ask him, rather than focusing on kind of the outrage of the day.
So if I may, just to I guess, after shitting on, I will now defend my miserable industry. Journalists do ask him these questions. Trump has he is so difficult to cover because he just steamrolls you, right? You can ask him, is the sun shining today? And he will go off on a tangent, and you can say, but I asked you this question, and he will go off on another tangent. It's virtually impossible to get an answer out of him that, you would want. But I would say to JD, to your question before about what could they do better, what could we do worse, focus on the incompetence rather than the sort of like moral high ground thing that the media does, right? Because a lot of people, in fact, you could argue more than 50% of people, don't have a problem with Trump on a sort of like moral relative level. But if you could point out that, he doesn't have a plan for healthcare, right? He goes back and forth on these things. He's incapable of doing sort of like the day-to-day governing that the presidency actually is. I think that's the job of the mainstream media, as it were.
My defensive media,
as a member,
if you don't mind, my defensive media always has been in the era of Trump, because I used to get these questions. So Carlo and I worked together back when I was a White House reporter, and I covered the first Trump administration. I got these questions all the time. What the fuck are you all asking that dude that question for? Why are you spilling all of this ink, writing about this, writing about that, writing about that? And I will tell you what, in my experience, a decade or so in this game it's very simple. The reason we're going to write about the most outlandish shit that Donald Trump says is because the average person who's at home is going to watch that segment or click on that article way more often than that same person is going to click on an article on budget reconciliation or what's happening to Social Security. That's the important stuff, but the wonky stuff that's important is also really boring, and it makes people's eyes glaze over. And that's like the boring making the sausage part of politics. And so, yeah, it is like, holy shit, Marjorie Taylor Greene said what? Like, yeah, that is going to be a top story that every newsroom's going to understandably send people to, because in an ad-driven model, the way any newsroom is, or any of us that do this and that, we recognize that there's an appetite for that which is kind of salacious or a little bit different or a bit controversial, much more than like, oh, what are Republicans going to put in the reconciliation bill? Yeah, Jeremiah.
Can I offer a story that we can focus on that both, it inspires a lot of discourse and attention, and it's the kind of thing that people don't ask Donald Trump enough about.
Love that.
Here's my example. Egg prices right now have hit their all-time high. If we all had a discourse about the cost of groceries under, and eggflation underneath Biden, can we at least do the same thing for Trump? If it happened for Biden, and it was a little ridiculous that Biden was getting stuck with the price of eggs, you can look at a chart. I don't know if you have a producer pulling it up in the background now. Eggs are at an all-time high right now. So can we call it like Trumpflation now? That's my only ask.
Another example is I've got a guy who's on the immigration beat at Newsweek, does some great reporting, and he's pointing out to me today that Fox and some of the conservative media were going very hard on the fact that ICE in Boston was doing a bunch of deportations today. But he was like, but they've been doing these removals for a long time. I mean, you can totally argue that Biden was a disaster on immigration. I would agree with that. But it's not like it just changed on Monday. right? It's just the framing of it all of a sudden is, oh, they have decided that they're going to start doing deportations. They're going to start doing these mass arrests. They've been trying to get these, criminal migrants out for months, years.
I love that you were able to just pull up price of eggs.
We pulled up, this is from the St. Louis Fed, and it does show us that the current price of eggs is like near, actually, to Jeremiah's point, it's like right now. And also, this is probably slightly lagging economic data because most central banks operate that way, so this may not be the most updated, but it's what we're given right now. And we see that's the summer of 2022 that Dan the Man was just hovering over. That was our summer of like mega inflation when the Democrats were like, hey, here's a EV clean energy bill. We're just going to go ahead and call it the Inflation Reduction Act because we want you to think that we're doing stuff on inflation. And then here we go, and it's back up. I do know there's a lot of accounts on Twitter, a lot of liberals who are like, I'm keeping score every damn day of the Trump presidency, the price of eggs, the price of rent, where interest rates are. Everything that you threw at Biden, we're going to be choreographing and chronicling every single day of the Trump presidency and making Trump and his supporters respond to that. Guys, hang out 1 second. We're going to come back to this, and then we're going to talk about the meme coins on the other side. Let's take our last public ad break. Time to do it? Yeah, let's do it, folks. All right, it's about that time again. One of my favorite times on the show. We hear from the sponsor. If you're serious about investing, you got to know about public.com. You can invest in everything: bonds, crypto, options, stocks. They even offer some of the highest yields in the industry, like the bond account, 6% or higher yield. It stays locked in even as the Fed cuts rates. Remember, we could get 2 more 25 basis point cuts from the Fed in 2025. And what sets Public apart from the competition, you get the tools to become a more informed investor. Built-in AI tool, it's called Alpha, doesn't just tell you if an asset is moving, it tells you why that asset is moving, so you can actually understand what's driving the performance of your portfolio. Public.com/CT to learn more, or go ahead and scan the QR code. Jeremiah, Carlo, come on back in. The water's warm. All right, it's time now for like the thing we've always wanted. We've been building up to this. The shit coins, the meme coins, launched on the final days when Donald Trump and now First Lady Melania Trump were private citizens. They were still private citizens when this launched. I want to be legally fair here. U.S. President Donald Trump has been criticized for launching a meme coin while saying he doesn't know much about the cryptocurrency. The digital coin, it's called Trump. It appeared on his social media accounts ahead of inauguration. The value of a single coin shot up to $75 within a day, but has since fallen to $39. I think we're even south of that. I think we're closer to 32, 33. We'll pull it up. We're at 35 right now. This is updated. God, that's still a tremendous loss of value. Jeremiah, a lot of retail investors out there, people who don't know what they're doing. They're saying, I'm all in on the Trump trade. My man, you know as well as I do, they bought in at levels way elevated at 35. They're left holding the bag right now. What do you make of this? This is a wild one. This is.
It's almost beautiful in how blatantly cynical and corrupt it is, and just like you can imagine what a form of legalized bribery would look like. Like, let's imagine the typical case of bribery is that, the president has authority over something and you'd like him to change the policy. And so you just hand him a big bag of money, you hand him $20 million and you say, how about you adjust this regulation? And he goes and does it. And that's like your very typical case of bribery, right? The problem is that's very easy to trace. Like that's pretty blatant. But with Trump coin, what you have is a asset, these, crypto coins that Trump owns like 80% of them. And so when you look at Trump coin has a market cap of however many $billion, 10 or 20 billion dollars. I don't even know what it is right now. Most of that is 80% of that is held by him. And so if you want to give him $20 million, but you don't want it to be obvious, you can just call him up and say, hey, I'm buying $20 million worth of Trump coin, which will inflate the market cap proportionally so that you have another $20 million of net worth. And by the way, it sure would be nice if you did this thing for me. And like, it's basically a legalized slush fund, a legalized form of bribery where anybody can just contribute to Donald Trump's net worth. And it's breathtaking almost, and how brazen they are about it. Like, it doesn't, what, I'm going to get mad about it, this hysterical liberal on the internet, like, haha, who cares? LOL. What are you going to do? Cry about it? They don't care. It's just, I'm almost in admiration of how just brazen they are about the whole thing.
Yeah, and then the thing was, Carlo goes in as president. After Inauguration Day, he retweeted the original post. So he hasn't posted about it since. Then he had that kind of gaggle in the Oval Office. He's like, I don't know much about it. And then the price tanked by like 20% in 15 minutes. Now, obviously, even before this, we had DJT, if you guys remember that, which now feels like forever ago. But
that
Trump
was
media
the way
stock,
to theoretically sort of buy in on the Trump phenomenon.
which
right?
itself is nonsense because it's a SPAC, and we price all
Right.
SPACs at $10 in the financial markets for a reason. It's because if you go public via SPAC, you don't have to show any of your homework. There is no real valuation. It's Fugazi.
Well, that thing makes
it's all
no
Fugazi
money.
money. Exactly. Right. And it makes no money. They hemorrhage money. But Carlo, to Jeremiah's point, man, this is uncharted territory. I know I want to be careful with what I said before. If you're outraged over everything, you're outraged over nothing. But this would be
something to be. This is certainly worth being outraged about. It's just, what can I add to what Jeremiah says? It's just so grotesque, right? It's like this. It's just the whole thing is grotesque.
It's hard to imagine the founding fathers predicting the shilling of shitcoins to the public the day before inauguration, right?
Yeah.
And I've been struck by that. I've been saying, man, sometimes I have these moments of go back to Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, President Madison. I present to you a future world of the Republic where the incoming president's out there shilling a shitcoin. And he makes himself, by the way, on Sunday, there was one point before inauguration, Donald Trump had become, because of this, the 25th wealthiest person in the world. I can't imagine with where the market cap's fallen down to, that's still the case, but he's still up there. These are billions of dollars on paper that materialize virtually overnight. So if that's where we're at a week in, fellas, we're in for a long 4 years on
Buckle
meme
up,
coins or
baby.
anything else, right?
What's funny is that it was so successful that they did it a second time. They had the $ Trump coin, and then they immediately followed it up with $ Melania coin. They called it the Melania meme. And first of all, nobody has ever made a meme of Melania. That is not a thing that happens. Donald Trump is, even though I don't like the guy, he's very memeable. He's funny on Twitter. Mm-hmm. He's got an inherent sense of humor to him. What is Melania meme? But the thing was so good that they just, let's run it back a second time. And apparently the market cap of Melania meme hit $1 to $2 billion at some point. So I don't know, man.
Here's a question for you guys.
It's wild. The amount of money out there that, if I can put on my blatantly partisan hat for a second and just go super partisan, the amount of money, stupid money out there that will just pour money into anything conservative branded is wild. Black Rifle Coffee, it's coffee but conservative, if you watch Fox News, all the ads on Fox News are just the dumbest shit in the world. It's all prepper scams and crypto coins and buy gold and do you have mesothelioma? The amount of money that's just people, and it's the same reason why every shitty book from Bill O'Reilly or Ann Coulter goes #1 on the amount of money out there that just pours into conservative branded products is shocking. I have been offered money to shill conservative stuff that if I was not, that I was genuinely tempted by. Is an amount of money that I thought about and ultimately turned down. But it's out there, man.
I have no soul and no morals. So if any of those advertisers would like to come over here to Common Threads, I will gladly read ad reads on mesothelioma, on Super Beats, on Black Rifle Coffee. Please give us your dollars. Well, no, we've got a great sponsor now. We're very happy with, but you get my point here.
Reverse mortgages with JD Durkin.
Yay, Carlo, we got 1 minute left before we head to the next block. Go for it, Carlo.
I was just going to say, is it any grosser, the Melania and the Trump meme coins, than Amazon paying $40 million to the Trump family to do a documentary on Melania Trump? These guys, the Trump guys, they are what they are, right? This is... Is it surprising to anybody? The thing that's really surprising is the heel turn with the oligarchs, right? That's the thing that is so different now than last time.
Yeah, the oligarchs. We didn't get to it in the show. We might hit it in overtime a little bit, but I've been fascinated with the Sam Altman versus Elon Musk thing happening behind the scenes, and then just say nothing of the inauguration setup, man. That was wild.
They got better seats than the cabinet members did.
Yeah, of course. Oh, cabinet members, take a back seat. We got Sundar Pichai and Tim Cook heading out here in the front row. That was something else. Guys, hang on 1 second. It's time now for our fan favorite segment. Let's do it.
Say something.
Nice.
Time now for Say Something Nice, sponsored by Public. So we've been doing this segment since the very beginning. I'm actually excited for this for both of you guys. And the idea of this is I just get people on the show to say something nice, something redeeming about those in the great arena of political debate with whom you disagree. And so I'm going to ask both of you, and this could be say something nice about Donald Trump, the incoming administration, or anyone right now in the world of politics that you're like, how could you possibly think that way? Jeremiah, I'm going to start with you here. Jeremiah, say something nice.
Sure. So I think Donald Trump, I'm not a fan in general, but Donald Trump is genuinely a very funny poster. And like sometimes when on the internet, I have this dichotomy of like, if you're someone on the internet, you're either a poster or you're a reply guy. And a poster has chaotic energy. A poster has somebody who is iconic and idiosyncratic and creates their own movements. And a reply guy is somebody who's lame and who just follows other people and who jumps on board the train real late. They're reposting memes from a month ago, right? Elon Musk is a great example of a reply guy, even though he has 100 million followers or whatever. He's not good at it. He's not good at posting. Donald Trump is a great poster, even non-political stuff. Like when he tweets like, Diet Coke is mad at me, but that's okay. I'll keep drinking that garbage.
He's one of the funniest guys to ever live, I would argue. But yeah.
Donald Trump is a really funny poster, and it's tragic that he chose politics instead of like co-hosting The View or something like that, which is really his destiny.
My favorite all-time Trump tweet, I've never seen a thin person drinking Diet Coke. Classic pre-presidential Trump. That's like 2012. That's a real deep cut. That's like 2012, 2013 Twitter Trump. Carl, how about you, my man? Say something nice.
Well, the ultimate Trump tweet in my head is still washed up psycho Bette Midler. I don't know why, but that one still cracks me up.
It's always a good one.
Say something nice about Trump. First of all, I'm trying to be much more open-minded this time around than I was the last time, because basically what we're talking about, life is way too short to be outraged about every single thing some politician does. It just is, right? One thing I would say about Trump has spoken to the media in this last week more times, I think, than Joe Biden has probably during his entire presidency, right? The Democrats wonder why they lost that election. One of the reasons was because they kept Biden completely hidden. And you got to fight for what you believe in, right? Trump is out there taking questions in the Oval. He already did like 2 press conferences. He spoke a couple times on Inauguration Day. That's what you got to do in this day and age. We cannot go back to a time where it's like you hear from the president at the State of the Union and, a couple months later, and then the press secretary sort of like is his or her voice for the remainder of the time. In this day and age, you got to be out there selling your brand or selling what you're trying to do, and say what you will about him, but he does that better than anybody.
Well, we've never before quite blurred the lines between the awesome powers of the presidency and a personal brand, but it's going to be fascinating to watch a rising generation of political figures, right, who start to just do the same thing, running for Congress, running for state secretary of state, running for the presidency, whatever it is, and now saying you got to have this accrued brand and a way to do things there. I want to shout out a few. We had some great comments throughout the night from Lee Williams, from Courtney Kittens. Shout out to Courtney. Nathan just popped in there as one, so I appreciate all that. We got to leave it there, guys, because that's about all the time we got, but I could do this for much longer. That's how I always know it's an awesome show. I hope you guys will rejoin at some point, because it's a fascinating conversation, and wow, what a dizzying 72 hours. And to Carlos' point, man, we just had it. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild next 4 years. Jeremiah Johnson, Carlo Versano. If you're watching the show, please go follow these guys across all social. Jeremiah and Carlo, awesome to have you boys. Thank you.
Thanks, JD. Nice to see you, Jeremiah.
All right. Cheer. Look at that. That was a great say something nice. God, man, we've had some that are just like they get divisive fast. And now that's going to be a good one. All right, let's bring in Japan Dan and Taylor Craig for a little cleanup here. Welcome to Common Threads Overtime. Can I get a cool sound effect, Dan? Let's see. What's your favorite? What's Dan's favorite sound effect on the show? Pew, 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 pew. Yeah, that's a classic one. Taylor, I'm going to start with you. Taylor, what from the show that we discussed or did not discuss? Discussed or not discussed that you're most hyped up about?
Disgusted.
Yes.
We didn't get to the external revenue.
probably not something that you would expect me to say. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting that is it inflationary or is it not? You have Trump coming out and saying that there's not going to be an income tax, and there's like very, very radical ideas here. So I am just sort of curious how that actually would play out. And of course, in typical branding fashion, like he couldn't do it without branding it the External Revenue Service, right? It's just another like master stroke of marketing. But I don't know if it has any teeth. What do you think?
Well, so he had said this before, and I'd forgotten this because it was like time's not real. But he had said this before the election. I'm today announcing I'll create the External Revenue Service to collect our tariffs, duties, and all revenue that come from foreign sources. We'll begin charging those that take money off of us with trade. They'll start paying, finally, their fair share. A couple reporters over at Bankrate go on to say, currently, Customs and Border Protection collects foreign revenues and enforces U.S. trade laws. Some experts said the new agency in and of itself likely would not have a dramatic effect on consumers, but research shows tariffs usually mean higher prices for consumers. I just feel like this is the type of thing, it's just like no one's really going to know what it does, but he's going to stand there on a rally stage and be like, I created your beautiful External Revenue Service. Don't you love your External Revenue Service? And everyone's going to go nuts. Yep. And like no one's really going to know what it is.
I mean, that's how you do it, right? You put a brand on top of the idea that people are going to be taxed less. Yeah. And it's not hard. This is speaking to people that feel like they're ridiculously taxed. I think it's like I said, a master stroke of branding. One other thing that I really wanted to get to, I know Dan Carlo or Jeremiah was joking around how like no one was a historian there about the 14th Amendment, but Dan, I know you got a little bit of context there and kind of when the 14th Amendment came into being and sort of the history there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert. Let me just check when it actually came in. 1868. I know it was one of the three Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, 15th. The 13th was the abolition of slavery, which was a Lincoln project. But the 14th and 15th, after he left this earth, I should say, the radical Republicans had control of Congress and basically all of the decision-making and legislation during the Reconstruction period. And they were far more right-leaning at the time, more on the side of abolitionist policies than Lincoln, who was sort of trying to straddle the line of being a president that everybody could support. So didn't want to scare away border states by promising abolition early on in the war. Wanted to play the legalese the way you have to when you're a politician by making, the Emancipation Proclamation, free slaves that are captured as we capture Southern property, and they are property under Southern law. So it's very, legalese way of saying it without actually having an amendment. But he realized that, when the war was over, there would no longer be war provisions that could be enforced like that. So 13th had to get through, and he was trying to temper the radical side of his party to not scare away, border states and possibly throw the tide of the war or, create more rifts when the South rejoined. And when he was gone, there was basically nothing stopping them. So 14th and 15th came very quickly on the heels of that.
Just the thing is, you take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. But obviously, though, at the same time, you've had presidents who have pushed for constitutional amendments, right? And like that's a fair game thing. Hey, there we go. By the way, we got the top. Where's the camera?
On the TV. It's right over there on the TV.
On the TV. Hey, what's up, folks? Thanks for tuning in. So, right, but that's the thing, though. It's like I think the last time we passed an amendment was the 27th Amendment. It was under Clinton. It was like 92, but that's one of my favorite amendments because that was like written by James Madison. It took 202 years to ratify, and it actually didn't become official until Clinton was president. But that's like a difficult balance, right? Because you take an oath to defend the Constitution as it is, but at a certain point, though, it's like, presidents are allowed to try and enact change, try and like have a bit of a new spirit on things. But again, I don't think that this one what's the phrase? Passes the mustard?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, there's having a different spirit on an amendment. I do think this is like a pretty direct contradiction, right?
It's also like of all the amendments you're going to go after, it's like you're going to go after one of the Reconstruction amendments, like one of the ones that I feel like universally throughout history be like, these are the really good ones, like the really important ones, don't touch those. It's not like the 18th Amendment where it's like, all right, we banned booze. Shit, we got to pass another amendment so like we could bring booze back. Like, there are probably sillier amendments. Yeah, well, hey.
You got one?
Bingo.
Cheers to overturning prohibition. Can we do, okay, what's this comment here? They'll for sure never give in. That's the whole point of the Second Amendment, is to fight back physically, to actually stop the enforcement of the so-called laws as if they're real anyway. Shout out to G-Cart 2.
I think that was in response to the question we posed. Like, do you think Dems are going to be pushing back on Trump, or is it just too chaotic right now? I don't
think Democrats know what they're doing right
now. I've never
some do. Some
Democrats as
do.
proponent of the Second Amendment.
They also do. Can we play the AOC thing while it's just us?
Oh, yeah, might as well, right?
So this one, I haven't watched this. This is Representative Ocasio-Cortez sitting down with Jon Stewart. I don't know what this is about, but we flagged it for the show. Let's take a listen, and we'll figure it out together.
Ready?
Yeah.
He is much more normalized this time around than he was the first time. The first time, people were really on edge. They were on guard. They were very vigilant about any break that he would have with these norms. This time, the norms are becoming him. Like, the norms are embracing him. They're all like, they're all in now, because this is now a billionaire feeding frenzy.
Show with Jon Stewart podcast there, the representative from New York. And that's funny because we had that comment earlier. We're kind of like, something feels a little bit more normal about Trump. And I think her warning there, without the broader context, is like, careful not to normalize this guy. Not like, it's kind of like the contrary to what I said earlier a little bit of like, if you're outraged over everything, you're outraged over nothing. And I feel like her argument's a little bit more like, no, you have to call out everything for the absurdity that we think it is. Like, you can't normalize Trump wackiness, but then I sit there and I'm like, I go back and forth though. 7 for 7 in the swing states.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that the election was almost like a big middle finger from the working class to the ruling class. And so you got like these, you got the Bezos, you got Zuckerberg, Musk, and I don't know if Musk really falls into that category. Specifically the ones that are just controlling corporate media, and I know with the Washington Post, Bezos has a big role in that. But in general, it's just people feel like their lives are almost like Kanye West always said, we're living in a simulation. It's like everyone feels like the systems exist as the way they are and they're never going to change. And this idea that government works for the people is something that's sort of being lost right now. So, I guess in that vein, people are extremely fed up. And I think the ruling class almost is being forced to listen. And I don't want to, by any means, defend everything that Trump stands for, just sort of talking about the social dynamics of why I think a lot of people in those positions were so motivated, beyond just having being upset that they couldn't say the R word anymore. That's not actually the prime motivation to me.
I'm actually curious for both. You guys are both from Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So when I was a kid, it all came down to Florida election night. The late great Tim Rusher used to sit there famously, put it up. He'd say it's Florida, Florida, Florida. It's no longer the case so much, and I say that respectfully because I feel like Florida is pretty firmly now in the column to the right.
Yeah.
But like anecdotally, you guys, I don't mean for like your friends and family necessarily, but like when you go home, like what is the embrace of Trump like throughout Southern Florida or wherever in Florida that you're from? Because I've got the very, I'm born and raised with the tri-state area bias of New York, New Jersey. I'm the type, it's like that famous New Yorker cartoon is like the world is basically from here to northern New Jersey and then past that is like everything else. So I'm really curious what Florida has looked like because I feel like that's Trump central.
Dan, I'm curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in Miami, a little further south of Taylor, and I can say that it's very blue immediately in and around Miami. It's actually a little more red in the northern parts of and the southern parts of South Florida, and then the rest of Florida, besides maybe Tampa and Orlando metros, are pretty blue. But it's a mix of. It kind of has like a Southern Republican vibe of I've got land and I've got trucks and I want the someone who lets me shoot my guns at people that come on my land and then get in my truck, and it's that kind of Southern a little bit, with a lot of Hispanic distrust for anything left leaning. socialist kind of policies. You know, a lot of Cuban emigres, so they're scared of that word altogether, and they go right for that. And then there's also kind of the young urban, like crypto tech hip kind of crowd in the cities too that I think are going that way, especially with all the crypto and Trump ties and stuff. Now they're seeing him as the guy for that. So
they're going towards Trump.
Yeah. But I mean, primarily, as you'd expect, the cities are always end up voting blue, but. We saw a lot more of the red creep into Dade County this year. I remember, I think it's a lot of the older Hispanic vote that remembers life in Cuba, in Castro's Cuba. And
can you highlight my screen real quick as you're talking about that?
And there's
I have the counties.
I do so many jobs.
Yeah, let's do a county map. Come on, let's go. Teach me. I know. Okay, so Orlando.
Look at that. Look at that. Miami-Dade, 55 to 43.9. That's freaking
crazy.
nuts.
You don't get any more granular review than that, or no?
No, that's county by county, and then you got Broward, which is obviously very, as you mentioned, very heavily Democratic.
That's like recount central for a long time.
Yeah, right, I mean, as you know, JD, this Beltway right here was always just like for Democrats,
Miami
like that's where they
Metroplex.
made their money. Yeah, like that would and then right around Tampa, like you said, Metro Tampa. Leaning red.
Hillsborough.
Orlando, as usual, went blue. Tallahassee went blue. Big cities.
College towns. Gainesville went blue. It looks like that county in the middle left of next to Jacksonville is probably Gainesville, University of Florida. So
yep.
Big university towns.
Alachua. Yep.
Yeah.
So what's up there in the Panhandle? Oh, Tallahassee.
Yep, Tallahassee. Tallahassee, as some might call it.
Tallahassee. Damn, I love that. I like people call Nashville nasty, but I like Tallahassee even better. That's really good.
No.
So I had done, Taylor might remember this, my old documentary, we used to look at pivot counties. These were counties that had voted twice for Obama that then pivoted to vote for Trump. And Monroe County, I think it's called Monroe County, Florida, is the Florida Keys. It's like south of Miami-Dade, if you had that map up.
Yeah.
And had voted twice for Obama, went for Trump. It may have stuck with Trump in 2020, and then here seems that's pretty overwhelming.
Very convincing.
Monroe County. So
people live on their boats and they don't want to be fucked with.
Correct.
They're like,
yes.
This is my land. Maritime law. Don't come near me.
There's not much land, so they claim what they have down there.
It's Arrested Development. Take to the sea.
Take to the sea. And it's also a beautiful drive, obviously. If anyone's ever done that, driven down to Key West, and it's amazing. Beauty. And it's the sort of thing, it's like, what was that thing called? Like Boaters for Trump? Remember the whole Boaters for Trump phenomenon? I feel like that's big in Florida, right? That's not going anywhere. Of course. So I love that. This is some great talk soup, says Andrew Stylberger. Thank you. Also, Nickelodeon had a good comment earlier. I think it was a quote from Frank Underwood.
Yeah, there it is.
Manade whip. Politics is like real estate. It's all about location. Shout out to Nickelodeon.
That was
7.
in reference to how the CEOs are right behind Trump during inauguration.
Oh, killer comment.
Very, very close to him.
Yeah, that was so funny. It's like, I don't know that they all had spouses. Was Bezos the only one with a spouse who was there?
No, actually, I think Zuckerberg's wife was there, but I don't think she was like right behind him. Look at that! Look at what a pleasant comment for you.
No, but I paid this dude off to say that. Thanks, Nathan. No, but that's so funny because Lauren Sanchez was just there chilling, and I like that Bezos is kind of like, like my wife sits next to me, and Zuckerberg's got to be on the other side. I go like, oh man, that shit was wild. That was wild in Stat Hall or in the Rotunda. That's also wild that they moved that indoors. And I know there was a lot of conspiracy people like, it's about safety, it's about this and that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's because it was brick fucking cold. It was 15 degrees in Washington, D.C. That would have been miserable to hold that thing outside with the instruments, the people, the crowd would have been miserable. Like,
the instruments, I didn't even think of that. That's probably...
What's that?
The instruments, I didn't even think of that. That's probably... I don't know.
I didn't play an instrument, but I'm just thinking, like, if you got
frozen
like, big
valves,
cold brass.
Yeah,
frozen
valves.
How do you play that when it's like freezing cold? Did you guys play instruments?
Do you play the frozen bass?
Frozen valves, I said.
Valves.
Frozen valves.
I played the trombone. I still do, actually.
Still do?
I still do. I don't have my trombone. There we go. There he is.
Hey,
I don't have my I'm still doing the one eye at a time thing.
That's fine.
Because right through the gap between the computers.
No, I like this, though. Would you
I leave the
one day
frame.
bring the trombone into studio for show?
I got to get it out of Florida and to New York, but I can
it's
do
down
that.
in Red Florida.
Are you fast enough at the trombone to do the ba-ba-ba-bong like in real life?
Yeah,
there it is.
Live, absolutely. We'd be the only politics show that does the air horn live.
we're like the Tonight Show, but a politics show. We've got a live band. We
got a live studio audience. That's what it's all about.
And Roots is here, so everybody give it up.
Yeah. Shout out, bro.
Amazing.
I don't know what Stylberger's referencing here. So thank you for the Florida deep dive, because it's like I was today years old when I learned.
I will to also answer your question about sentiment there. Like,
Yeah.
I honestly, generally, when I talk to people, it's a lot of excitement. It's not like a lot of doom and gloom about Biden, and there's not a lot of discussion about Harris. It was always in the vein of like the fact that joking around freely and saying whatever the fuck you wanted. I don't know. I think it felt like a backlash from so many years of political correctness. And it seems like a lot of people that were very strong Trump supporters, they almost felt liberated in a sense down there. That was my takeaway from it.
Remember that phrase, white lash?
No. Is that a thing?
White lash was how Van Jones famously referred to the election night results in 2016.
Oh yeah,
true. He's like, this is a white lash against the last 8 years of Obama, and I do think the federal government DEI initiatives. I think a lot of this is kind of like, that's the phrase I keep kind of coming back to about that. This is some great talk soup, says Andrew Saddleberger. I just dropped this tweet in. Can we pull this one up, because I want to ask you guys your take on this one. This is the PBS,
yeah. Give me 2 seconds.
PBS
I'll get it ready
tweet.
for you.
So on top, and this is like, this has been so difficult because I've had like different hits and stuff during the week trying to keep track of the dizzying array, which also shows you how prepared Trump and his staff were this time around, right? They came in hitting the ground running, they're ready to go. This is one of the many things Trump did, and this is for Style Guide. I'm fascinated with this stuff. Associated Press will refer to the Gulf of Mexico by its original name while acknowledging the name Gulf of America. AP will, however, use the name Mount McKinley instead of Denali. The area lies solely in the U.S. As President, Trump's got the authority to change federal geographical names within the country. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was very quick to use Gulf of America. Do you see that? He was the first one. He's like, really? Oh, there's some in the Gulf of America. A lot of this is posturing. This is media. This is whatever. But there is something there. I don't know what it is, but this is a really fascinating one.
I like the fact that they'll refer to it the Gulf of Mexico, but they're gonna acknowledge Gulf of America. We do acknowledge it.
Like a land acknowledgement.
Exactly. It feels Native American. It feels like a land acknowledgement. And they're doing a rain dance next to the Gulf of Mexico. Sorry, Gulf of America.
Gulf of America.
So Apple Maps still puts Gulf of Mexico. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to be an interesting one, right?
That's going to be a conversation with Tim Cook from the White House.
Oh, dude, imagine that.
Fix it.
He's like, listen, Tim Apple. I was looking at the maps, Tim Apple. I saw you still call it the Gulf of Mexico. That's the woke name. We call it Gulf of America. Tim Apple. We must change it. And then the Mount McKinley thing. Was that a really big one for people? Like, oh, we have to change the name back to Mount McKinley. Are there a lot of big McKinley enthusiasts?
I think it's like
just
a lot
an American patriotism thing.
Totally,
and they're all like kind of meaningless gestures, but it definitely plays to his demographic of uber patriotic to the point where anything that's not like, I'm patriotic. I love America. I love being an American, but do I really give a shit? I mean, I don't think we should necessarily change names that do exist all the time, but I don't think that I don't think that. There you go. Bing bong. I don't think
Dan gave this to me.
I did give that to him. I got anyway. I don't know. I don't need to tell the story of where I got.
That's
that.
fine.
So relevant, but
it's all good.
It's kind of relevant. I mean,
all right.
It was in Lake George, New York. I was there for is it Lake George? Yeah, for spring break. And I will say this always surprised me. I mean, we know this is the case, but from the way the voting maps go, but I didn't actually realize how we associate Republicans in rural environments with Southern Republicans and old plantations and stuff like that. But there's so much red outside of the cities in the Northeast.
Oh man.
And Lake George, like, it's literally it's its own brand of almost like, I don't see this much when I'm down in Florida. I mean, I'm in South Florida, but even when I go to the north parts of Florida, it's even more pro-Trump because they're ag communities, and I think probably they more directly face the consequences of being in the same state as major metropolises, which seem to attract all the attention and attract all the money and attract all the problems, and they more than probably the guy in DeLand County or something, or one of the northern counties in Florida, gives that much of a shit about Miami. Or the South Florida metro area. I think probably the upstate New Yorkers are tired of downstate New York being constantly this big blue thumb, and I was surprised. So I found that pin there incidentally at a convenience or at an antique store. But
Did they say don't give this to a damn Yankee?
Yeah, keep this to yourself, Patriot. But it's just surprising.
Comrade.
We think of it as so much of our, I think, political landscape does kind of still have, southern and northern trends and resentments and things like that. But
Long-standing.
But the red tide goes everywhere. Fun fact about long-standing. Yeah, well, of course. Fun fact about the about far right-wing organizations. The American Nazi Party in the 30s was headquartered on Long Island. And their most famous appearance, which everybody's probably seen the picture of, is selling out MSG for a Nazi Party rally. So that is not a Southern exclusive kind of philosophy. That grew up here.
Yeah,
too.
that was the big one. I thought Democrats, I understand why they went after it, but when Trump did the MSG rally a few months back, right before the election, that was a big one. Hillary Clinton, a few others. I think Tim Walz dabbled in that. You're kind of like, they were very careful not to make direct comparisons when they're just kind of like, whoa, it's reminiscent of Nazi Germany or Nazi supporters holding a rally at MSG. And like in real time, when I heard that, I was kind of like, I could see that just absolutely exploding in your faces right now. That's just going to blow. The blowback's going to be so fierce. Yeah. And it's going to be so swift and so punishing. And I was out there the night before the Trump rally, the MSG one. Remember, that was a big Elon Musk rally. That's like he rocked the dark MAGA hat. Yep. I went to the New York Ranger game the night before, and people were lined up. The night before was a cold night too. People, I was trying to get a sense like, where'd you come up from? People were driving up from the Carolinas. They were driving up from the Panhandle in Florida. Like, yeah, we drove up over the last 2 days, stayed at a motel and wherever, and now we're here to watch the president. We're going to be front row for this MSG rally. And also that at the time was a bit of a head scratcher, but like he came into New York City and he got the blessing of Jimmy Dolan, I guess, to do it at MSG, just like he did Capital One the other day down in D.C. He did the rally in Chinatown.
That's right. Yeah.
It's literally the recipe for success that the Republicans have had, where it feels like they are going after the 10% of black folks that were voting their way and like went right at them, whereas Democrats, it always felt like wasn't not hungry hippo. I don't know what the term is, but they're just trying to keep everyone close.
Come one,
they're like,
come all.
They're like, yeah, stay with us. I swear we're cool. Like, felt like a parent that didn't want their teenager going out. But yeah, the Republicans, it always felt like they were trying to gain market share constantly, rather than just focusing on their base and trying to cater to that base. They were always trying to expand the tent. That's a great example. Fucking right in the middle of Manhattan.
Red place.
Dude, who leads the party after Trump? I don't want to get like 4 years ahead of myself, but I still sit there and I was like, this is a party of one. This brand, this exact go-to. Because even if you're a vice president, Vance, if you're at some point, you have a brain of normalcy that's going to kick in, and even if you try and do a Trump impression, I think there's only one Trump, and I don't know exactly what that means for the GOP after this, but again, that's a fight to be litigated way down the line. But like, unless he tries to overhaul, listen, he's already trying to change part of the Constitution. Maybe he's trying to change the other part, and he wants to like pull an FDR presidency and ride this out for.
I really don't think there's a single Trump endorsement that would ever happen without strings attached, unless it was one of his kids and him saying, hey, Don Jr. I mean, look at Rumble. Don Jr. has a huge show on Rumble, and he is like actively trying to be that media presence. And like, it's clear that Trump, more than anything, cares about his family legacy. So, I mean, the answer might be as simple as the same last name. But yeah, it's kind of wild to think and the brand of one.
Politics.
Shout out to Rumble.
Yeah, shout out to Rumble. Over 200 live on Rumble. Thanks, everybody.
Shout out to Rumble.
What's up, boys and girls? I'm sure there's like
absolutely awesome. Thrilled about this. So, I just want to read off this. I feel like can we just hit this JFK thing real quick? Can we just pull up anything new on this? Because this is like
the declassification.
Trump executive order declassifies JFK, RFK, MLK assassination files. This is a short time ago. This is shortly before we came on air. No one really knows what to make of it, but here's just like a brief synopsis I've got while we pull up something. President Donald Trump signed an executive order Thursday to declassify government records related to the aforementioned assassinations. Trump's order could put an end to some longstanding questions surrounding the assassinations, which occurred more than half a century ago. A lot of people are waiting for this for a long, long time, for years, for decades. Everything will be revealed. That's what Trump says. Remember that. That's an important detail. Everything will be revealed.
Everything,
He's
whether you
promising
want it
full
or not.
Transparency. I don't really know if you're like full transparency over this, but Trump has nominated, of course, Senator Kennedy's son, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as Secretary of the U.S. Health and Human Services Department. I've also just saw an interview recently with Bobby Kennedy Jr. talking about, he's like, oh, everyone's interpretation of how my dad died is wrong. He's like, the bullet case, like the coroner found this, the bullets were fired that direction. This is all about the Ambassador Hotel in L.A. in, what was that, 1968? So this, I don't know. This is one of those things that's going to get talked a lot. I don't really know that we end up getting anything here.
I thought you were going to say Trump has named RFK Jr. as like the secretary of finding shit out. He's just going to put him on the case. He's a little detective in the White House.
We created a fake Doge. You might as well create a department called the Department of Finding Shit Out. Bobby Kennedy, go for it, man. What are you coming up with? But I don't know. I mean, if this is the sort of, so the other thing too, and I'm curious Dan's take either on this or this next part, is that I also saw an interview with Trump where I think did he sit down with Hannity the other night? And Hannity asked him, who encouraged you during your first term not to release this stuff? And he said, Mike Pompeo. He name-checked Pompeo, CIA. CIA directly. He's like,
Pompeo catching a stray.
CIA, yeah, big time. Pompeo's caught a few strays from Trump. Right. He's just straight up like, my director for the CIA told me not to release it. So there's got to be like some type of CIA involvement. Dan, are you buying or selling this idea of...
Ooh. I buy it. I buy that that's the thing that keeps all presidents from doing declassifications, because I think probably it's a bipartisan thing that the people like, that there's transparency in their information. We do release a lot more information than other governments. I can tell you this as an aviation enthusiast trying to find procedural charts and things like that. Like, we're open and public about a lot of stuff. Freedom of information is a great way to learn things that the government knows. But I see why that's important. Like, there are things from the Second World War that have a timestamp on them that they're not going to be released until 2040 or something, like 100 years, because they are related to active groups, that still exist, or regimes or something that still exists. So there's relevant information that may change the current political climate or the current, diplomatic climate based off of information in some of these things. And him releasing this now is definitely just like a, look, I'm transparent, have all this information, we've got it. I don't know why we're hiding it. That's, unfaithful to the American people, and you can have it. And it plays into the whole, we're cutting the bullshit now.
Sure.
Kind of rhetoric that he has. But I'm sure that there's reasons why the CIA wouldn't want it out. I don't know how salient any of them actually are to national security, but they know a lot of shit about a lot of things and connections and ties. Some things might be embarrassing. Right. That often happens, that we covered something up, or that we didn't act quickly enough, or that we, played both sides, or things like that. So there's all sorts of shit in those documents that probably are not very flattering.
Got a couple comments here.
Yeah, what we got? Let's pull some comments. What's the top one? This is the segment is actually favorite comments of the night. Courtney Kitten says, I want to know about the aliens. Oh, dude, Trump, okay.
The aliens are coming.
That's a really good one. What if Trump finagles out a way to like take credit, and he's like, I'm the president who will unleash the Area 51 files. I will be the person to tell you that we're not alone in this observable universe. That's a non-zero chance of the next.
And then we'll have an Earth first policy.
Earth first.
We're tired of subsidizing Europa.
Make Earth great again.
Reference on the show. Very nice.
Thank you. That's the most likely place to find not intelligent life, but life.
Also, my buddy Murph texted the other day. Is at a group chat. He's like, "What happened to the drones?"
Look at that.
He's like, "What happened to?" Oh, dude, yeah, here you go. And here's Nickelodeon 7.
Look at that.
What about the drones? What happened to the drones? I spent the last 5-6 days out in Jersey.
Hunting them down.
I was staring. I go out there on my mom's balcony. I look up in Riverdale, New Jersey. I'm like, come on, give me some sign. Give me something. It's just airplanes. That's all.
I can just imagine you on the back of like a Jeep just trying to like track it down like it's a Ghostbusters ghost. And you're just like holding a device to it, trying to capture it.
See, and then you see video of plasma, which it's different than drones. But you ever see like plasma caught on tape? Plasma's crazy.
No.
Plasma's like these mysterious blue orbs that like move.
Yeah.
There was this news one, Fox 5 here in New York, just like a month or two ago, had a bump out shot off a helicopter. It was a view kind of like over Governor's Island looking north, so Jersey on the left, and this blue plasma orb. You see it off in the distance, and it flies like right by the camera. I have no explanation for it. But Mr. President, if you're watching, I'm sure you are, I would love to see the unreleased files on the history of plasma.
Yeah.
What about the drones? What about the aliens? We had another comment there from Andrew Stahlberger right before that, but I had missed it because I got distracted with the aliens.
Oh yeah, he was mentioning Rogan.
The Rogan to executive order pipeline.
I mean, I think it's just RFK, the Rogans of the world. Like they want that shit declassified, so it will be declassified.
How about the pyramids? Now we'll get cooking. What does the U.S. government know about the pyramids?
They were a little too exact in their construction, I think.
They're crazy. That's awesome.
I loved Ancient Aliens because it always, like, the beginning of every new proposal from them, it would always start with, of course this, but could it be?
Yes.
And that magical phrase, but could it be,
right,
opens you up to a world of possibilities.
Yeah, and then that's our next half-hour programming. Is that obscure
exactly.
possibility? That's where we're taking the show now.
Yeah.
But imagine this, and then you're like, all right, well, that's a kind of a stretch, but yeah, I'm on board. I smoked a bowl, so I'm on board for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, anything else here we want to hit on?
Yeah, why don't we just cycle through all of the comments? Like
so grateful for all the comments. Record viewership again tonight. Ours hyped up. Thanks
absolutely
everyone for
love it.
Absolutely killer tonight.
Ignore this one.
Oh, I love that. That's it. Lee Williams, what is the most important new Trump policy that Dems want to crush ASAP? Yeah,
I think we did a great job of addressing that.
We kicked that one to the gap. I don't know if I haven't. Do I have any? What's the most important new Trump policy? I'd say deportations. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what did Jeremiah say deportations? I think he did, yeah.
Yeah.
I think deportations of like a day one. Well, I don't know. I say deportations and then wait 5 minutes because it could change based on the next thing. Right. Lee also says, conversely, what's the most important policy Republicans want to protect? That's a good question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would Republicans most want to like codify? I think probably ensuring that Roe is a state's issue. Mm-hmm. If they have a way to further codify what they did with the court a few years ago, and like a type of executive order or something or a proclamation that's like the federal government won't touch this issue, I think they would protect that. Even though to Carlo's point earlier, it's kind of like the dog who finally caught the car and they didn't know what to do with it. So I heard another one there. Oh, well, I mean, not to get in the weeds of budget reconciliation, but tax cuts, the problem is if you use reconciliation to pass these bills, they expire, which is why the Trump tax cuts from 2017 are expiring. That's why there's this big rush to get them done again. So I think if Republicans could figure out a way to make more permanent their existing tax cut structure, then that would be it. Because otherwise, if you use reconciliation, like you just kick the can down there. We got to have the same conversation like 5 years from now.
Yeah.
This is kind of a controversial one here. Saying the 14th Amendment isn't very clear on that whole birthright topic, which is why I pulled up the 14th Amendment just so we could actually look at it and reference it. And I thought it was actually pretty damn clear.
Oh, there you go.
It's like if you're a naturalized citizen.
Pocket Constitution.
That looks worn.
You just never know. Yeah, it's from the Cato Institute. Shout out to Cato. Yeah, I mean, the 14th Amendment is 1, 2, 3, 4... It's 5 sections, and it's really just this top one. All persons born or naturalized in the U.S., subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the U.S. That's what it says.
Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Yeah, I think that's pretty fucking clear.
Just enough. Maybe just enough.
And of the state wherein they reside.
Yeah. I mean, a Seattle judge. I don't know, man. The Supreme Court, man. Could you imagine? Something like that gets taken. Yeah, I find myself in agreement with Jeremiah's take. I don't think anything happens here. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the U.S. So you can't, like, Georgia can't pass a law on this on its own. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, property without due process, fair. Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's the whole first section of amendment.
Got a little compliment here.
14th.
We got some Hot Topics.
July 9th, 1868. Hot Topics.
1868.
Was that a store?
It was a
Hot Topic. Hot Topic.
What did you get at Hot Topic? It was like what? It was like
it's kind of like emo,
grunge wear.
Yeah, blacks and spike boots and
playing Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, they'll take the video down if I do it.
If I sing it, will they take the video down? If I sing "Sugar, We're Going Down" right now.
You're allowed.
No, it sounded too good. I think that's the real thing. They're gonna take it down.
So we have this interesting one from G Cart. I don't know if you can read this. Trump is a Democrat. There's no real other parties in government, or even if there are, they do nothing that will actually stop the tyrants. so they might as well be as bad. Basically, I believe this is them trying to say that Trump is sort of, what's the word? What did Sarah Palin used to call herself? She's I'm a maverick. Yeah,
Maverick.
like Trump. Hey, where'd Russia go? She was like a maverick, and or this person is sort of implying that Trump is different from every other politician in Capitol Hill, and the party lines don't even matter because everyone is just in the pocket of corporate donors. Which
This might
is
be somewhat
legitimate.
conspiratorial. Like, there's no
Yeah.
parties. It's just created for us to, think that we are
We just get a tube
we're doing
of
our
gobbledygook.
we're doing our due diligence as citizens by having options and making choices and stuff like that. But they're all a cabal of power hungry or manipulative, and it doesn't really matter.
Everyone's
It's like when you're at the store and you're choosing between two items without realizing that the parent company owns both.
Right. It's all Nestle or something.
Yeah, it's all Nestle,
just-
exactly.
Just
I'm
drink it.
choosing between Nestle products, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
pocketed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard. I guess an extension of this take that I like, or I've heard over the years, is like, no matter who's president, obviously we're going to run up deficits. We're going to increase defense spending. This kind of like war hawk mentality. You can throw at the feet of both Democrats and Republicans, and so at the end of the day, there's some differences, but it's like everyone's just kind of doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. But is that just it? It's like if you become president, you become member of Congress, like the momentum of the totality of the thing that you're now responsible for governing is just moving. It's like you can't really make that much change as an individual. I don't know, maybe. I like that take though. I like that question. Thank you, G Cart.
Thank you,
G-Cart too. That's a solid one.
Thanks very much.
This is related to wow, quite a long applause there. That's a standing
I'll see
ovation.
if I can shorten it.
This is related to Don Jr. and if he does actually have the charisma to capture the wave, or it could be referencing Vance. I'm not sure. I believe Don Jr.
Does Don Jr. have the charisma?
Maybe.
And also another take on Don Jr.
Adept and Young got the Trump seal of approval by making him president. Don Jr. I don't know. I thought Don Jr. was going to make a run for mayor of New York if there was like a big leftward tilt in the city. I saw that as being a bit more reasonable than a run for the presidency, but I don't know, man. Eric Trump's like very involved with the crypto promotions. I feel like that's his baby. That's his like World Liberty Financial, the meme coins. That's the Eric space. Barron, I don't know, what is Barron going to do? Barron kind of stole the show the other day because he's enormous.
He's enormous.
And he hasn't offended anyone yet. He's
Not
like the
yet.
only-
You rarely hear from him.
Yeah.
He's 6'9". That's a big boy.
He lives in the village.
Oh, East
He's an
Village.
NYU kid.
West
NYU
Village?
kid, yeah.
He's an NYU kid. Yeah. I saw some funny tweets about that. I won't repeat them. There were some very good tweets this week.
Yeah.
But to look at the before and after of the last Trump inauguration versus this one to see how big Barron's gotten, it's incredible.
Yeah, he's huge.
They also credit Barron for like the podcasty,
growth hormones.
like we went this way, we do this platform, Nelk Boys, Rogan, and all that. That apparently Barron was largely the brain behind all that, which I'd buy.
Mm-hmm. This is related to our drones and aliens in the sky.
Really makes you think.
Wow, it really makes you think.
If everyone's looking left and right, no one will look up. Whoa, awesome.
Scary.
Or do we have to look within?
Ooh, wow, big if true.
Oh, crazy. That's really good.
Hopefully
comment.
Andrew bringing up a really good point here, talking about this last election was the first cultural revolution embodied by an election since 2008. Like 2008, I'm sure you remember it very well. Like it was a very like cultural excitement, like a huge movement of hope.
Yeah.
I mean, JD, you probably remember it a little bit better
Wait,
than I.
Court's leaving. Can we say
Court's
bye? Can we
leaving.
put Court on the big screen? Bye, Court. Thanks for hanging tonight.
Do we have the screen?
Hang in.
Wait, hold on. Wave goodbye to the camera.
Oh, should I do the room cam?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hold
yeah,
on,
room
room
cam.
cam. There you go.
What
Nice,
did Court
nice
be on the show
pleasant
tonight?
wave.
There she is.
There it is.
I
Yeah,
need
get a wave over Dan's head. There we go. There it is.
Yeah.
Excellent work.
Thanks for hanging tonight.
Did that
Absolute
go?
pro.
I'm frozen on my room cam. Did it come
Total
through?
pro. No, we got you. Loud and clear.
All right.
First cultural revolution embodied by an
try it
election
again.
since 2008. Yeah, this one felt more cultural revolution-y than 2016. Because also, like Carlos said earlier, like Trump won the popular vote. I didn't really know that he would. I wasn't surprised he won, but I kind of saw an environment where Harris would win the popular vote, but Trump would win the right states. And just like wasn't even that close. It was just like, I mean, it wasn't like 84
Oops.
like we said earlier, but
Room cam died, by the way, Taylor.
so I don't mind about
That's
that.
all right.
2016 was on a smaller scale. This year is almost back to monoculture in a way. Yeah. Yeah, fair. 2016 caught people off guard.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there was a lot of people who hadn't voted, and I think that in part explains the surge we had in 2020. But then 2024, man, I don't know. This was a weird one. We're like kind of post-pandemic, and that was just, oh man, I don't know. There's gonna be great books written that come out this year about everything Biden-Harris. Also, the Biden-Harris stuff, I don't feel like we've properly dissected enough. Like, was there a tension?
Yeah. I think it's been pretty solidly reported that there would Biden just continues to go around saying that he would have won if he would have stayed in it.
They're just talking shit about each other behind their back.
I think they absolutely are. Like,
it's wild.
Yeah, Biden is just taking this position where he's like, I mean, I completely agree. At that point in time, that was the right decision for them to replace him on the ticket.
Sure.
And Harris was probably the best option. Probably could have campaigned and done a little bit better as a candidate, but yeah, he pulled out way too late, and really didn't give his party any chance to win.
No, not at all. Wild.
And he wouldn't have won. He would not have won.
Do you think Biden would have done better than Harris? Would he have won any of the 7 swing states? I'm sure he would.
I think he would have done better actually, because he always did well with the black vote. And I felt like Harris lost out on that. So
Ironically. Go figure that one out. Bye, Dan. It's been fun, man.
See you, bud.
So, Taylor, while it's just you and I here, we're both markets guys.
What do you want to talk about?
I mean, well...
The surge? What about Trump demanding that interest rates get lowered by the Fed? I don't know where he gets off in thinking that's actually in the realm of possibilities. Yeah. Powell has been through this before. He's just going to be like, fuck you. I'll do what I want.
I mean, I think it's designed to get the headlines that say Trump demands.
Right.
Which is like the equivalent of you and I sitting here being like, the creators of Common Threads demand.
Right.
Donald Trump. It's like, it has no value. It doesn't matter.
It's like Michael Scott saying, I declare bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy. Of course, it doesn't matter. No, we have... central bank, it's following the data. It's data dependent. It was interesting. He used the Davos comments. The Davos speech today was actually pretty wild. It was, because he made the comment there. He went after Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America,
saying that he was restricting conservatives from using Bank of America or like conservative companies. Is that it?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. He made allegations of unbanking conservatives, and he said it in response to a question from Moynihan relative to B of A, but he also threw in Jamie in there, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase.
Right.
And I was watching a lot of the business news coverage throughout the afternoon. It wasn't entirely clear what he was referencing outside of like little anecdotal things that have happened here or there over the time.
I mean, I'll be honest though, like if I hear that, I don't think that's something you just make up out of thin air. Like specifically Bank of America, what you've done to conservatives. Yeah. I mean, not like I've seen any evidence, but I would certainly believe that you don't just go around saying that without actually like having examples of people that have come to you personally and been like, they shut me down, you know?
I did see some follow-up reporting that, thanks, Dan the man. I have seen some follow-up reporting that, like, if there had been faith-based groups, who were debanked, that first of all, the bank actually legally doesn't have to tell you why they're taking your accounts away.
Which is bullshit.
But that it means that, like, you didn't meet basic capital requirements or you somehow fell afoul of the banking rules
in their standards,
which may have nothing to do with that you're a faith-based or a politically based organization. Mm-hmm. But if you happen to run afoul of the rules and you're a faith-based organization, it allows you to say, they're targeting me, I'm a conservative, they took away my bank accounts, I want my beautiful credit cards, you took it away. So the difficulty for those banks is, like, first of all, like, nothing changes to the underlying value of the stocks. Like, they're forward-looking PE multiples. If you look under the hood for the earnings reports, like, nothing's going to change. But I do feel like if you're those companies, though, you got to make some change, because you have to play the game of optics. Perception drives reality, right? So they got to give Trump something. Oh, don't you worry, Mr. President. We're correcting our previous mistakes. Yeah. We're gonna play the game. Everything's gonna be great, Mr. President. Like, lower our
we apologize.
Tax. We apologize. We're so sorry. Even if there's you kind of like, and then we get into the big conversation we had a lot the first go around, which is like the emperor has no clothes. Mm-hmm. At what point do people just have to say things in corporate America to Trump just to be like, oh yeah, no, you got it, sir, absolutely, great point, we got it. So that was a wild one, and then the general Davos stuff. But the market's been up. We had a big spike after the election. Then we had a healthy bout of selling until the end of the year. The S&P pulled back a bit, maybe up like 23% for the last calendar year. And then we've been off and roaring. We've had the S&P reach new all-time highs the last couple of days. So I think between Scott Bessent becoming Treasury Secretary, markets got who they wanted for Treasury. Better than feared inflation data, increasing optimism, interest rates are going to come down. And I think the markets are just waiting for tax cuts to come front and center. So, like, you know, Trump's going to be able to likely govern over new all-time highs. The difference between his all-time highs and Biden's all-time highs is that Biden didn't do a very good job, as I don't think many people should, of, like, spiking the football. Trump's going to make sure everyone knows the stock market's reached all-time highs when he's president. Yeah. We're never going to hear the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, like, it remains to be seen. I mean, the amount of red tape that's going to be cut is probably immeasurable. It's probably going to be the biggest deregulatory effort we've seen in decades. So it's really unclear how that will impact stock prices. I think a lot of it is going to come down to environmental regulations and things of that nature. Just, you know, if you... Who did we have on the other day? I think it was Jim Iorio, and he was talking about cattle, and he was talking about oil, and basically the amount of, like, tracking and all these little different things that all these agencies request from you, all these forms you have to fill out, everything that's compliance related. When you cut down on that, naturally a business owner has more time to focus on their business. I don't know the regulatory volume in so many different industries, so I don't know if it actually is going to have that much of a tangible effect on a Target stock or a Apple stock. But more so, I think the lowering of the corporate tax rate is really going to be a boon to investors.
Should be. Apple's in a tough go of things. They've gotten several downgrades recently. They're worried about weakness out of China. And so out of any of the Mag 7 companies, that was a good comment from Courtney. We were talking about the media earlier. Of all the Mag 7 companies, that Apple's the one that's kind of like most doomed right now. It's almost like Apple's on the outside trying to claw their way back in, but that's what Tim Apple's for, man. That's what Tim Cook's going to be in there doing the work for. It's like massaging up to the president, making sure you avoid the worst of the tariff disputes, because we haven't really gotten to the tariffs yet, like a little bit with Canada and Mexico. But if and when we get back to like the real Beijing versus Washington tariff tit for tat news cycle,
right?
That's wild. A company like Nvidia, a company like Apple, they get a ton of their revenue out of China, and those are going to be the big names that are heavily consolidated in the S&P 500, and those are the ones that are going to be like, for the love of God, Mr. President, please go easy on us.
Historically,
we don't want to raise prices for customers.
I mean, historically though, has there really been as much of a groundswell around making sure that people buy American as there is now? Are we really is this that normal? That, I mean, tariffing the hell out of different countries. Yeah. There are some really reasonable arguments to make, like about how Japan will. You visited Japan, Dan. I visited Japan as well, and I found that there are cars over there that we'll never see. But I'll tell you, there's no American-made cars on the streets of Japan. They're all Japanese auto manufacturers, whereas they can sell over here, and they just will never sell our cars on their streets. So, there's a lot of being taken advantage of, which obviously Trump supporters are really aligned with, and they believe a lot. But I don't know if there's ever been this much of a concentrated effort on buying American and forcing countries to buy more American.
Yeah, not this holistically, I feel. Like, I think automotive, there was definitely because our automotive industry was struggling, I felt like that was a big kind of buy American cars thing. I would, a sentiment that was felt.
Besides, like, labels on products, like, when has there really been an effort?
I mean, how do to me, it's also like, I don't know that manufacturing is necessarily the cutting edge industry in the States that we want to be saying everything has to be made in America. Like, I'd rather our factories be innovating than making small plastic, things
made in America's
that we use
expensive
every
man.
Fucking day. Like, I don't. The toy dinosaur for the kids can be made in China. I don't need to know that there's a factory.
Shit.
I'd rather the factories here not be making tiny plastic little things.
Well, Biden did a lot.
We're not going to export tons of those and be making a bunch of money on it.
Bringing chip manufacturing to the U.S., that's still not like done. Like that's Arizona. TSMC is going to do a lot of investing in Arizona. It's unclear if they're going to be able to get up to. It's very complicated to make a semiconductor and have a fab that can do it.
Yeah.
And the intellectual property that is from those companies, like you still got to train these fucking workers to be able to do it. You're not just gonna have a bunch of Taiwanese scientists figuring it all out. Like you need some American bodies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that remains to be seen, and that feels like that's something that Trump's gonna take credit for when that gets up and running, and we actually have a very advanced manufacturing business, to your point, actually running.
I wonder if he'll do what what we did during the Second World War and renaming certain Germanic sounding foods, like I think we called sauerkraut freedom cabbage or something. I wonder in his quest to try to rename things more patriotically, geographical things, maybe we'll start renaming physical things.
We got some comments, by the way, related to this.
Like hamburgers will no longer be hamburgers because, we want to be...
No, we're going to change the name of Brooklyn because Brooklyn is a Dutch word.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It'll be Fredericksburg.
Absolutely. Harlem and Brooklyn, watch out because those are from the Dutch.
Oh, my God. Well, we have so many place names here.
They call Amsterdam the Williamsburg of Europe.
That's what they said.
No, this is
Nord.
This is a reference to when we went to Amsterdam together last year, 2 years ago. And there's this neighborhood there called Nord, which is sort of, it's old industrial or inventory, warehouse space turned into clubs and bars and stuff like that, and craft breweries.
Sounds familiar.
And someone literally to us, like another tourist from Europe, was like,
she lived in Amsterdam.
She lived in Amsterdam.
She was visiting Italy, and
she was
ran into her in Italy.
She was like, and without knowing that we were from New York,
so out of touch.
let alone Williamsburg, she was like, "Oh, Nord is the Williamsburg of." I'll be the judge of that. And then if it's not fair to compare anything to New York, but we went there and I was like, this is
anyway live from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, aka the Nord of New York.
Welcome to the show. East Williamsburg In Place Industrial Park is actually
Maha Khan has a really interesting talking about Canadians fearful of the impact of Donald Trump's tariffs. You also got Abby Jones saying the External Revenue Service, brilliant. That's brilliant. And Abby Jones, again, on top of this, with a little bit of colorful language. Fuck their cheap fake products. America ingenuity. Get off your asses. Bend some wood. Float a river. Build a wall with a locking gate. Knock first, please. Abby Jones going in. Thanks for commenting. Love the colorful language. You have a safe space here where you can curse and say as much shit as you want. But I don't know if that was directed at Canadians. I think it was directed at Canadians.
I think it was my comment about Chinese products or something.
It was.
But how can you build a wall? How can you build a wall to China? I think they're talking about Canada. Abby, let me know if you're talking about Canada or China. We have a running bet.
I don't know. I don't think it's Canada. I think, but by the way, I like to petition for us to cut new promos for the show starting next week, and it's just a clip of Taylor saying, "Get off your asses," the way that he just did.
Get off your asses.
That was really good.
I love the Z's.
And I really like Maha Khan's comment there about Canada because that is, it's like I think for Trump, it's the liberalization of Canada that's really.
He hates Trudeau with a passion.
Yeah, and it's like, it's just something. It's.
Hey, thanks, Abby. Love you too. Thank you.
Low-hanging fruit for him to come into office day one and be like, all right, tariffs for Mexico and tariffs for Canada. I'm gonna play tough with everyone.
The amount of damage that photo from Canada did, where it was the LGBTQ activist, but instead of LGBTQ, the sign said LGBTQIA2S3 or something like that. Plus, and it was literally like just a meme around conservative Twitter, and I think if that's on an official government press conference,
that was spiking the football.
Yeah, that's a lot of people can dance around.
I'd actually be curious. I'm really interested in Canadian politics. First of all, their Supreme Court. You ever see their Supreme Court? What they wear? I'm obsessed with this. If you look at that photo of the Canadian Supreme Court, it's my favorite thing in the world.
Oh yeah, let me find that.
Well, it's very House of Commons-esque because they're a Commonwealth, right? Don't they wear?
Yeah, look, it's these Santa Claus outfits. They look like Santa Claus, all 9 of them.
Oh my God,
it's
this
absolutely
is hilarious.
awesome. If we could pull up a photo of the Canadian Supreme Court,
give me 2 seconds.
But to me, it's just like, and I get it because I've had several trips to Canada the last few years, and it's like you go to a Toronto Blue Jays game or you do an event. I had a tech conference up there, and everything is liberal. There we go. We are cooking. Look at this. this. Are you kidding me? Give me this Supreme Court over our lame-ass black robes any day. This is awesome. I don't know anything about the ideological makeup of any of these humans. I don't care. I love this outfit.
Gotta say, they're not very diverse.
I don't know if they wear this all the time or...
only on Christmas.
I'm going to go ahead and assume they wear this all the time.
Yeah, I would assume so.
This is what they wear.
I
It
actually
looks
think
cozy.
what's actually interesting about the Canadian Supreme Court is that the justices have they have a quota they have to meet where they have to go around as carolers at least 2 hours every week around Christmas time, so they can wear the same outfits when they go door to door and spread holiday cheer.
Don't have to bring a gym bag to the Supreme Court.
This is awesome. They got our Supreme Court. I assume the court is in Ontario. They got our Supreme Court beat.
Ottawa, probably.
Or Ottawa, pardon me. Thank you. It's
Ottawa, Ontario.
Oh, it's one of those.
It's not incorrect.
Correct. Well, right. Fair. Thank you. But it's it's been really interesting though, because around the time that we had, which I still sit there. It's like we look at 2020, be sensitive here, and I'm like, we had long overdue conversations, reckonings on different issues we grappled with, American history, statues, the whole nine a few years ago, and to watch Canada's land acknowledgement, I thought has been so fascinating. So you go up there in every event, at least in and around Toronto. That's liberalized part of Canada, right? We get the same separation between cities, and I don't know if you go like way to the far expanse of Winnipeg or like rural anywhere else that they necessarily do the land acknowledgements. But like that's the equivalent of if Trump were running for president, the type of stuff he would like rail against and be like, we're not going to do land acknowledgements anymore.
Yeah. I think, they definitely have a lot of First Nations folks out in the Western Territories.
Of course, big time.
I don't know if they're more like the Cowboys of Canada. I don't know very much. I probably know more than the average person about just different Canadian regions, but and the makeup of people. But
do you have a favorite one? I asked the hard-hitting questions.
I don't know. Probably British Columbia. I think that's a pretty
BC guy.
Standard. Well, because of the nature, because of the mountain ranges and stuff up there, it's stunning.
I thought you were going to say because of the weed. BC weed's supposed to be the best out of Canada.
BC Bud, they say.
BC Bud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably because of the nature. I mean, like the central ones are less mountainous. They're much more flat. They're more like the Great Plains. I mean, it's this extension of kind of our same natural,
straight out.
Natural landscapes. But what's fascinating to me about Canada, I don't know how the liberalism trends in Montreal or in Quebec generally, but because I feel like Quebec will just probably not want to do what Ontario's doing because they have that incredibly... We don't have as singularly one group and another kind of a divisive issue. We've got many groups and ethnicities being represented, and we don't have entire states that are kind of, like we don't have a state that says that the main language is going to be different and things like that. Right. And there's constant secessionist conversations and things like that in Quebec. Their unity is always fascinating.
Listen. My dad doesn't have a racist bone in his body, but like, and I know that's a really exciting way to start a sentence. But he's from Toronto. And if I ever hear him like classify one group of people in a derogatory way, it is French Canadians. He just fucking hates French Canadians.
Wow,
he's
really?
just like, people from Quebec, he's like, I don't fucking trust them. Like this. Like, just clearly does not like French Canadians. And I think that's a palpable feeling both ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Up in Canada.
They have a long...
I'd be very much in favor of restoring the Nordiques. And those jerseys, those are the sweetest of any. If I had to think of any franchise that no longer exists that had the sweetest threads, it's got to be Quebec Nordiques.
Beautiful. I really love the
gorgeous,
third jerseys that the Colorado Avalanche did. They did Quebec, but in Avalanche colors.
Oh, right.
It's pretty sick.
Right.
Yeah, we are back to hockey as we
are
usually
back to
end
hockey.
up being.
This also substitutes as a fake hockey podcast. Yeah, the Joe Sakic of.
The Bettman conversation. I mean, all the Canadians will tell you the Quebec Nordiques should come back, especially the Quebecers. But.
You guys on Puck and Panther should be like a say something nice about Gary Bettman. Whoa, damn, right? You open up the floodgates. Everyone be like, I have nothing good to say.
Big believer
in
the Florida Panthers.
I think I think Panthers fans probably on average are pro Bettman.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Bettman brought hockey to South Florida and made fans out of all of us.
And he stuck up for us for a long time.
Even when we weren't.
Yes, are you kidding me? Look at these jerseys.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
They're really cool.
Wait, these are the ones that Colorado did
as a reverse retro.
Yes, right.
Remix.
Okay. So their colors, but with it's got the floor at the bottom, the fleur de lis. Is that what that's called?
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
The Quebec logo. Yeah, Quebec.
Yeah, that's just too nice.
Yeah.
All right, shout out to that. All right, that's awesome.
I really liked our guests tonight. I thought we had like
we had a great show.
Like, I mean, even though they looked like exactly the same person, like I thought they had really interesting.
Someone said that immediately, right?
Distinct views.
Are you guys related? What did they say?
They also seemed like pretty well educated. Like they weren't just talking out of their ass.
No, it was a great
I really
conversation.
enjoyed listening to them.
That's how it rolls. And man, I can't give away our hand about who's booked for upcoming shows, but man, we got great ones, don't we, Taylor?
Oh man, yeah. We got some special stuff coming up, and we're closer to Capitol Hill than one might think.
Yes, you're not kidding, man. Yeah. Big time. We're hyped up to go. Anything else top of mind you guys really want to hit on before we call it a 2-hour show tonight? Have we ever gone 2 hours?
Holy shit, we're up to 9 o'clock.
It is 9 o'clock.
We need to shut up.
Like, we're gonna do CTOT. For like a few minutes at the end. But I was like, no, we're going to...
I did not expect an hour.
Vamping for a bit. I was just waiting until we got into the Quebec Nordiques portion of the show.
We need some branding. Next week we'll have some like maybe a different background or something, or some overtime specific assets.
We'll have something fun. I think we got a really fun comment here if we want to pop that on screen. But cheers, boys. It's great again doing the show with you, with your Common Threads branded shot glass.
Dan
cheers.
drank his already, probably. No. Cheers.
Wait, hold on. Wait, someone show the logo.
Here you go. Can you see
the logo
mine?
of the show? We also have our names on them. These are the first gifts Taylor got us here from Launch Lab Now.
We're a small production, but we're happy to be here. We're happy to have people watching.
So thrilled.
Commenting.
Always.
The reception's been great.
The reception has been awesome, and especially the shows we've done in 2025 have been all dynamite across platforms.
Yeah.
So we've expanded viewership every week. The guests have got more solid, and I cannot extend my gratitude enough to these dudes. I don't like them very much, but they are very good at what they do, Taylor and Dan.
It's a necessary punishment for everyone.
It is, absolutely. So cheers one and all. What are we drinking, by the way?
Rum.
What did you pour?
Spiced rum.
God, really?
God bless you. Good luck.
I'm getting over.
Cheers, boys.
Oh, excuse me. It's good to drink when you're getting over a head cold, right? That's what the doctor tells you.
Brutal.
Pineapple under the seat time?
Take us out, JD.
Guys, on behalf of Taylor... Oh, God. Hello.
You can count him down.
On behalf of Taylor and Dan and
wants a
Chris
life
and Courtney
raft.
and Alexia and everyone else, awesome show. Thank you for tuning in as always. We'll be back next Thursday. I cannot even imagine the ways that the presidency will take shape between now and next Thursday. We'll be here to break it all down. 2 new guests for an hour and change. Thanks as always for taking the time. We'll see you again next week.